Welcome to the Manage Self, Lead Others podcast. Today's episode is republished from the archive. It's one of 50 conversations featured in the new book from the podcast Manage Self, Lead Others. Constructive conversations, true self-leadership and culture you can't fake. Available now on Amazon. Not transcripts, but Nina Sunday's reflections of each guest conversation. And for candid commentary with two sharp AI hosts, visit ninasunday.substack.com. Now, here's Nina Sunday with today's conversation.
Welcome, Andrew Bryant.
Hi, Nina. It's great to be here and long overdue.
Yes. Well, I've been really looking forward to and feel honoured that you're on the podcast at last, because Manage Self is the first two words of our four-word title, and you're Mr. Self Leadership. So thank you so much for your time today. So thank you.
Oh, no, it's absolutely my pleasure, and great to contribute to a very important concept because, of course, you can't lead others unless you first lead yourself.
Exactly. And I've been looking through you've got 3 books, and I'm looking through your new leadership playbook. Actually, the free download that will be in the show notes. So it's quite a bit of data in it. I'm thinking, oh, this is a really good book. And then I realize there's so much more when you actually go onto Amazon or your website to purchase the book. So I do urge people to do that. And there will be the links in the show notes. But you do pose an interesting question, which is, and give us the answer, which is, what's the big problem for modern leadership?
Well, there's always been a problem for leadership, and that is that leaders have to deliver results. If you don't deliver results, your tenure as a leader will be limited.
Mm.
In today's world, however, you have to deliver results and bring the people along with you, because if you deliver results at the expense of your people, your tenure will be limited. So it's managing this paradox of trying to get things out of people, but at the same time being human, making sure that they feel like human in that process. Now, the tagline of the new leadership playbook is being human whilst delivering accelerated results. So the big problem right now for leaders is actually defining what is human, because we have a challenger for that position, which is AI. Has this been written by an AI bot, or is this human? Does it serve humans? Is it for humans? And what does it mean to be human? Actually, is a philosophical question that started with the Greek philosophers 4 centuries BCE, and is now very much at the heart of leadership.
Oh, right, because there's some reference to Stoicism, isn't there? So what are the principles of Stoicism that relate to self-leadership?
Well, there's a number. I mean, Stoicism is about recognizing whatever is and adapting yourself to it.
Right.
Epictetus, one of the early Stoic philosophers, talked about, it's not what happens to you, but how you handle it that matters, which is really the core of self-leadership, accepting the reality, adjusting, and advancing towards your objectives. And the other things that the Stoic philosophers looked at was living a life of virtue or value. And a key to self-leadership is self-awareness and, what is important to me? What are my values? Am I living a life of intentionality? And I think it's worth just going back to my 2012 book on self-leadership with Dr. Anna Kazan, because we defined self-leadership as a practice, the practice of intentionally influencing your thinking and feeling towards your objectives. And so to influence your thinking and feeling, you have to be aware of the thoughts and feelings you're having and drive those thoughts and feelings towards your objectives with an intentionality. And that makes you the driver of your life rather than the passenger. And so lots of links to Stoicism, but bringing it into our modern and complex world.
Mm. You've listed a few concepts that I really want to unpack there. And one is, I often use the phrase, the intentional leader. And
Yes.
often with intention, it's actually having intentional language. It's like thinking about, if I say it this way, what sort of result will that have? And that's self-reflection and self-awareness, which is what you also mentioned.
Sure. I mean, I was running a leadership program for the government of Botswana last week. And it was really interesting that I had to pick them up on their language. And I made the statement, leadership is language. It is the way you say it that makes a difference. And we had a really strong deep dive around that.
Right.
Intentionality means, I am purposeful in saying something and considering the impact and outcome of that. Now, will I always get that right? No, I'm going to have a feedback loop and make an adjustment. We live now in a time where psychologists and sociologists actually tell us we have no free will. We don't choose the time and place of our birth. We don't choose our parents, our early childhood upbringing. We're actually quite programmed. And so what we think is free will is actually not. It's cultural influences and programming. But I think most of your listeners, and I know you and I have had this epiphany that's like, hang on a moment, why am I doing it this way? What do I really want to do? Where do I really want to go? What's important to me? And the moment that you ask those questions and you go, well, who's the me that I want to become? That's intentionality. So the leader is intentional for being the best version of themselves and intentional, what is the impact of my leadership on my followers?
Well, that's where psychological safety comes in, and being aware, which is those subtle things of not belittling or not making people feel judged, or how you handle mistakes. It's seeing that people can grow, not having a fixed mindset, which is you talk about mindset in your book.
Sure. Yeah, well, mindset drives behavior, and behavior reinforces mindset. It's always been a loop. There's a lot of stuff on, you'll have addressed this on your podcast, you'll read it on LinkedIn, and a lot of trainers of leadership, we'll talk about micro behaviors like not belittling, or 1 minute manager, finding something to praise. But if you go back to the intentionality, you talk about being an intentional leader or being an intentional self-leader. If you look at the intention to be a self-leader yourself, to take ownership of your thoughts, feelings, words, and actions, and to empower others to take ownership, then micro behaviors like belittling, well, that becomes obvious, right?
Yeah.
I was speaking in Iceland at the end of last year, and one of the other speakers made a really interesting point, which I've actually shared with some audiences and people. I've had some real pushback. So he said that the rules we make in life, in HR departments spend all their time writing rules for the 3%. 97% of us know that we shouldn't be doing these things. We have an internal code, right? But governments and HR departments write all these rules. So let's face diversity and inclusion, right? I'm the son of a mother. I'm a brother to sisters. I'm the father of daughters, and so I know it would be wrong, immoral to treat a woman badly. But if I join an organization, I'm forced to go to a diversity and inclusion training. And it's like, well, who's this for? Most of us know that that's the way to behave, but less than 3% of the population don't know, and they're the people that should be sent to the training.
I did want to ask, what is the difference between emotional intelligence and self-leadership? One includes the other.
Okay, so I gave you a definition of self-leadership as the practice of intentionally influencing your thinking, feeling, and actions towards your objectives. There are 3 research cores to self-leadership: self-awareness, self-regulation, which can be called self-motivation or self-discipline or self-management, and self-learning.
Right.
So emotional intelligence overlaps self-awareness and self-regulation. Right. Do I know what my emotions are, and am I able to regulate them?
Right.
And perhaps overlapping slightly into self-learning, if I blow it, if I lose it, can I learn to, cognitive behavioral therapy, can I learn to adjust my emotions and behavior? So there's a huge overlap between emotional intelligence. It's just that self-leadership is about intentionally influencing your thinking and feeling. Whereas emotional intelligence is awareness of the things that trigger us. So one is more proactive and the other is a little bit more reactive to what is happening.
Oh, thank you. That is such a good definition. I've always wanted to know that. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, you're talking about a topic that I've researched, written, and coached and spoken about for 25 years. So, I kind of live, breathe, and excrete this stuff.
and we're getting into the distinctions, which is great. Now, you talk about self-awareness being important, and what type of leader is not self-aware? What sort of behavior are they exhibiting?
Well, it's amazing that people get to the very top of organizations. We promote results, and therefore that creates a frame. I generated the results, and therefore my way is the right way, and that reinforcing frame of reference is the issue. I'm just going to divert slightly. When I moved from Australia to Asia back in the 2003, my Australian friends said, Andrew, you're moving to Asia, you're going to need to learn to be humble. And I'm like, well, how arrogant do you think I am? And they said, we don't think you're arrogant, but we think you're confident. And Asians can mistake confidence for arrogance. And I went, oh, that's useful. Let me look at that. And I did some research on this concept of humility, right? And a lot of people say leaders need to be humble. Humility doesn't mean making yourself less than somebody else. Humility comes from the Latin humilitas, meaning grounded. And in 2000, a researcher by the name of Tanguy, she defined humility as having an accurate, neither overestimated nor underestimated view of your own abilities, and the ability to consider other people's perspectives as equally valid as your own. Now, so this updated perception of humility links with the self-awareness and is ideal for leaders, because as a leader, we get to be a leader because we have the good ideas and we drive the ideas. We're the first at the whiteboard with the marker. We're first to solve the problem. But as we get to the top, we've got to recognize there are other perspectives, and that humility to go, what are the other perspectives? What if I am stuck in a frame? What if I have a blind spot? And the self-awareness to go, I have ideas, but what are the best ideas? You mentioned, we talked about culture, I think, before we pressed record. And the Japanese, and I mentioned this in the New Leadership Playbook, the Japanese do a really interesting thing. The most senior leader in the room speaks last. Because let's face it, right? If the CEO says, here's what I want to do, everybody else is going to go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. But if the senior leader goes to the most junior people, what do you think we should do? And then the next level, what do you think we should do? And the next level, what? Then the juniors are not inhibited by the existing frame of the leader. And so the leader gets to hear multiple perspectives. And then they can start to become aware of their own biases. Oh, I wasn't looking at it that way. And the appreciation that there's different ways to look at things. That self-awareness with self-learning really shows a self-leader.
Well, that obviously gets over the problem of groupthink. And especially, I know in Japanese culture, they're very loath to criticize their leaders. So by the leader actually not expressing an opinion straight up and asking for others, people then can be honest about what they think and speak it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because we don't think about that in that kind of Eastern Asian culture, because there's that great case study of where Korean Airlines, where when they were speaking Korean, the co-pilot could not disagree with the pilot because of the hierarchy, and they used to crash their planes because the co-pilot would have to hint at the fact that they were about to fly into a mountain rather than say, "Don't fly into the mountain." And so they shifted the language to English. And created a whole cockpit management system so that the subordinate could alert the senior that they were making a mistake. So the self-awareness that I don't know everything. It feels like I know everything. It feels that my way is the right way. But the self-awareness and the self-discipline to consider other people's perspectives as equally valid as your own. And then when the time comes to make the decision. Because if it is a crisis, if we are at 41,000 feet and oxygen masks fall from the ceiling and smoke fills the cabin, we don't expect the captain to come out and run focus groups about what he should do to solve the problem. Right. In a crisis, we need directive leadership.
Yes.
When we are dealing with highly motivated, highly trained individuals, then we want participative leadership or supportive leadership, or if we're dealing with a stable environment, we need achievement leadership. So understanding leadership style depending on the motivation and context of the followers and the environment is key to effective leadership.
Thank you, Andrew. And I'm thinking a little bit about motivation now, because people will bring discretionary effort to their role and to their performance if they are motivated. And you do talk about Vroom's expectancy theory in your book, and I was excited to see that because I'm a follower of Vroom.
Well, I love the name, Dr. Victor Vroom. I mean, he sounds like he's an anti-hero in a Spider-Man comic, right? So expectancy theory is brilliant. I mean, it's just so badly worded because who knows what valence is. But
yeah, exactly. I always get stuck on that one.
So for your audience, let's unpack this and make it really simple. When you as a human being, when you engage in effort, you expect to make some progress. If you go to the gym and lift weights over a couple of weeks, you expect to get a bit stronger. If you go on a diet, you expect to step on the scales and see some impact of that. If you don't, if there is no progress after effort, you lose motivation incredibly quickly. Secondly, when you do make progress, you expect, and this is the valence, you expect some kind of reward that is in line with your values, right?
Right.
So not just reward, but reward that you want, right? I was in a hotel last week, and they the basket came to the room to say we value as a customer, but they put a bottle of wine in there, right? Well, I stopped drinking 10 months ago, so the reward was not of value to me.
Yes.
Now, prior to 10 months ago, I'd have been very happy with the bottle of wine, but now that reward was no longer valent to me in expectancy theory, right? So we are motivated when we feel that our efforts make progress. I mean, they break your will in the military by getting you to clean the bathrooms with a toothbrush because you're not making any progress, right? You get broken and just that breaks our mind because we can't, and we don't own the task, and the task has no real value. As a self-leader, you know that you choose to do the things that motivate you, and you want to encourage others to take ownership of their objectives. And people will work harder on things that they feel grow them as a human being, reward them in the area that they want to be rewarded, than just being told.
Absolutely. And this whole concept of progress is so important. Because I actually have in my office, I have university students who assist me. They might do 1 or 2 days a week. At the end of, or towards the end of every day, I'll say, what did you learn today? Because I want them to feel like they're not just doing hack work, that they're actually progressing and they're learning, because I want them to feel that this is an interesting role and an interesting contribution they're making. And you can do that with full-time staff as well.
Absolutely. And I would add to that, I think it's great. And you and I have stood in front of classes as well, and trained people in doing stuff. And you need to stop every now and again and go, well, if we ended it right now, what have you learned?
That's right.
But what about being proactive? What about in the morning going, what do you want to learn today? And that engages the intentionality.
Yes.
Right? You've got a task, but what do you want to learn from this task? And that preloading, doing everything with purpose. And again, using the Japanese, I mean, I think, I don't want to use the Japanese for every example here because I've studied all sorts of different cultures, but just the tea ceremony. I was always impressed with the tea ceremony because I mean, I grew up, making builder's tea in England. You threw a tea bag in a cup and poured some boiling water and splashed some milk in it. There was no ceremony, there was no purpose other than making this warm, sweet liquid that you were going to drink. But when the Japanese spend hours, preparing to pour a cup of tea, it seems so pointless, and yet it's so purposeful because you're focusing the mind on a task with a purpose.
Yeah.
And I think it was the Buddha that said that enlightenment comes from chopping wood and carrying water.
That's right.
That it is that doing what you're doing with an awareness to the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Yeah, that's great. Look, your book has a whole page with a table of figures. And of course, I've only got the sample. And I was very curious about the decision formula. Is that worth talking about?
And how are we going to make a decision is a conversation, right? We can make a leader
Yes,
makes a
yes.
decision, leader makes a decision with input
right.
from others. It's a focus group decision. So there are all sorts of matrices around decision making.
Yes.
That the numbers that you're referring to is with self-leadership, we need to have an awareness around how much certainty do we need to make a decision.
Certainty of the
and
outcome.
Well, yes, because you mentioned that people are fearful and risk averse, right? Now, I've been just as you get to meet some fabulous people on this podcast. In my work as a coach and confidant to C-level leaders, I've met some incredible people, and I always ask them, "How certain do you need to be to make a decision?" Now, if you ask a bureaucrat, they kind of need to be 99.99% certain because there's fear of failure, fear of recrimination. Anybody at the cutting edge of an organization, it's 60-65%. If they got 60 to 65% certainty that they're right, they're happy to take the risk because a decision isn't final. If they get new information and we go, you know what, probably that wasn't the best decision, but we've got new information, we can adjust, then they can move forwards. And how do you unpack, did I make a good decision? Well, we did really well, therefore I'm a genius. No, we did really well. What went into that decision? Let's have a conversation about what we did right and what we could do better next time. Now, we know that when it goes wrong, everybody gets unpacked because we're looking for somebody to blame. But what we really need to be is, well, we made the wrong decision. What led to the wrong decision? Were we over optimistic? Did we not index? What did we not cover? And so that really understanding how we as humans make decisions and how leaders make decisions has to have self-awareness, it has to have self-discipline, and it has to have self-learning. So self-leadership is all over decision-making theory.
Wow. What a great answer. Thank you. That's incredible, because that's play number 8, which is decisiveness. And play number 10 is crucial conversations. I don't think any conversation with you, Andrew, would be full if we didn't actually cover crucial conversations.
Well, crucial conversations, I mean, there's a whole book just called Crucial Conversations, but let's say, I think, well, I've already stated leadership is a conversation.
Yeah.
How many times have we seen a problem arise because somebody didn't have the conversation? They didn't say, hey, this is not okay.
Yeah.
Right? So somebody turns up late to a meeting, right? And you just ignore it. Well, what you've just done is you validated that being late is okay.
That's right.
Leadership actually is the worst behavior that the leader will tolerate. So being late to a meeting, it may or may not be crucial, right? But if you don't have the conversation, if you don't put the fish on the table, and that's in the book, right? If we put the fish on the table, we can cook it and eat it. If the fish is under the table, it's going to rot and stink.
Oh.
So putting the fish on the table is having a conversation. This is not okay, right? And you see people engage in a behavior that they don't think is a problem, but it impacts other people. So you have to have the conversation. You have a feedback conversation. You state the facts. You talk about the impact of the behavior and what you want them to do in the future. Whenever I teach feedback, the question comes, yeah, but what if the person doesn't take the feedback? They get defensive or they get aggressive, they deflect. Then we have to have a crucial conversation, which is feedback on their ability to take feedback.
Oh, great.
And the crucial conversation is, hey, the crucial conversation is, hey, we had a conversation about this. There was an agreement for a change of behavior. That behavior hasn't happened. We now need to escalate this to the ramification. And that might be, getting the wrong people off the bus and the right people on the bus, referencing Jim Collins' leadership books.
Yes.
Or it might be, it is, this is a come to Jesus moment, is this, whatever, your choices are your choices, but you choose to be part of this team, this organization, this family. And if those behaviors continue, they are not tenable with everybody else. And that is a crucial, tough conversation. It has to be done in a way that you demonstrate the understanding of why people are doing what they're doing, but you also are prepared to lie down. This is the line. Above the line is what we agreed to. Below the line, this is excommunication. You get voted off the island. This is the line that cannot be crossed. And if people don't have those conversations, all sorts of terrible things occur.
Wonderful, Andrew. Now, we are coming towards the end of our conversation, I'm sad to say. But what is it that you want to make sure we cover off on, that we talk about in this conversation today?
So just the other day, I said something, and a friend of mine said, I nailed it. And that was, self-leadership isn't easy, or everybody would be doing it. But it's not complicated, but it isn't easy, because it means taking 100% ownership of what am I responsible for. I'm responsible for my thinking. I'm responsible for my feeling. I'm responsible for my words. I'm responsible for my actions. I'm not responsible for anybody else, but I am accountable to the agreements. I'm married to a beautiful woman and very happy. And so I'll say to my audience, am I responsible for my wife? Now, it depends on the culture, but very often people say, yeah, you're responsible for her. And I say, I absolutely not. She's a beautiful, intelligent, accomplished woman. How can I be responsible for her? She's responsible for herself, but I am accountable to her, right? We have agreements. And, because of those agreements, we trust each other. And because of those agreements, we support each other. So creating this definition between, I'm not responsible for my employees. I want to employ people who are going to take responsible for themselves. What I need to do is create clear expectations about the accountabilities of my employees, that they know what's expected. They know there is a line they shouldn't cross, and they know there's a whole bunch of stuff that they can actually create new territory and new lines. And in the New Leadership Playbook, there is a formula for leadership, which is clear expectations times mindset and motivation times right behaviors equals accelerated results. And so I really think that I hope the takeaway for your audience is that self-leadership isn't easy. However, it is the practice of self-leadership, self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-learning that allows us to be a more successful leader, a more successful salesperson, a more successful partner in life. Because if we're not leading ourselves, somebody else is doing it for us. We are not the driver, we are the passenger of our life. And therefore, you can't blame, complain, and play the victim, because that was your choice.
And the good thing is, I think my copy of the sample has a QR code leading to your YouTube channel, so people can catch up with everything that you publish, and your blog. I've seen your blog; it's really interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm clearly passionate about this stuff. I've been doing it for over 25 years and spoken in 35 countries on 5 continents. This is what I do. And I would give it all away for free, and I've given tons of it away for free. And so, yeah, go check it all out. And if you want to engage me within your organization or your own development, then you know where to find me.
Because you travel all around the world, and you also do virtual presentations as well.
We are all hybrid these days, are we not?
Exactly. Thank you so much, Andrew. We'll have the links to selfleadership.com in the show notes, and the free chapter that people can download. And is there anything in closing that you want to say to our listeners and viewers?
I just wish you every opportunity to become the best version of yourself. I'm version 6.2 at the moment. Version 6.2 has a lot less hair than version 4.2, but hopefully a lot more wisdom and compassion. And so, it is, life is a process. And the wonderful thing is that I can be better tomorrow than I am today. And for every listener here, set that intention, be a better version of yourself. That's what's going to change the world.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew Bryant. It's been a pleasure.
And the pleasure is mutual.
Manage, Self-Lead Others has launched the book. It's available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. Not just a collection of transcripts, Nina Sunday adds her own reflections about each guest conversation. Plus, you might like to join Nina on her Substack channel, ninasunday.substack.com, for candid, behind-the-scenes conversations with two sharp AI hosts who riff, question, and bounce around ideas sparked by the published podcast episode. And if you're looking for a conference speaker or workshop facilitator who can up-level your team in Australia or around the world, visit brainpowertraining.com.au or ninasunday.com. Until you tune in next time.
This episode is brought to you by Marqeta. When it comes to your payments provider, you can't afford to compromise. Marqeta's modern payment solutions flex with your business without the trade-offs. Stable and agile, secure and innovative, scalable and configurable. If they say you can't have it all, don't believe them. Your business demands more. Choose a payments provider that delivers more. Choose Marqeta. Visit marqeta.com/Spotify to learn more.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.